Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the magical mech users of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Centurion, as well as the supporting cast of the newly released Ancient Fairy Dragon archetype, and some generic synchro support that maybe doesn't always see play in Centurion, but does well with the Fairy Beast stuff, and gives us the potential for a more powerful end board than Centurion tends to accumulate on its own. So, if playing Centurion, but frequently having a light-imbued Chaos Angel on board as well sounds fun to you, let's get started. First up I want to mention, it is a 48-card deck because with the addition of the Fairy Beast stuff and Ascator Dawnwalker package, we have a total of 19 starters. The Centurion stuff itself doesn't have a huge amount of starters, so it tends to stick tightly to 40. We can afford to go over that, and because those packages give us an additional 3 bricks that we don't really want to see in this deck, we want to go over just so we see those bricks less often. The trade-off is that the end board can be much more powerful in this deck than pure Centurion tends to pull off. So we're going to start off with the Fairy Dragon package, starting with Regulus, which is a full starter, probably the best starter for this deck. So when normal summoned, or special summoned, we don't really have a good way to do that, Regulus grabs a spell or trap that mentions Ancient Fairy Dragon. There are only 2 in the game. We don't play the trap because it's an end board piece for that actual archetype, and there's not enough pieces to play that as an archetype right now. So we only play the one of World of Spirits. We'll get to that in a moment. Regulus also can special summon from hand once per turn a level 4 or lower light beast, plant, or fairy. Something from its own archetype, basically. It's kind of similar to Fairy Dragon's effect, but it's a little bit more restrictive. You can also banish this from grave once you've used it as synchro material to shuffle a field spell back into your deck and draw a card, so it refunds itself, which is dope. We also play the one of Spore the Fairy Seed. Spore the Fairy Seed, when special summoned, say by Regulus's effect, you can count the number of monsters you control, including itself, and modulate its level up to that number. So you can use this as a 1, or as part of this combo, you can use it as a 2 or a 3, and if you modulate to 3, that gives you your Ancient Fairy Dragon. Pretty dope. If this is in the graveyard after you've used it as material, you can also bring it back as long as you have a light monster on the field, which most of the Centurion stuff and all of this package is light, so that's very simple to do. And then the modulation is not once per turn, so you bring it back and you get to modulate to anything at the end of your combo, basically. So that gives you another 12, you can go to 10. That's how we make Chaos Angel easily, because we normal summon Regulus, grab World of Spirits, search the Spore, summon the Spore, go into Fairy Dragon, pop World of Spirits, grab the Centurion field spell, bring back Spore, modulate to 3, boom, 7 and 3 makes a Chaos Angel, with whatever field spell. So that's actually the only thing we're using World of Spirits for. So it's a field spell that, when activated, adds a monster that mentions Ancient Fairy Dragon, which is almost always going to be Spore. So Regulus grabs this, which grabs Spore. The rest of the text on World of Spirits is relevant in its own archetype, but again, that archetype doesn't have enough stuff right now to actually function. We're just using it as a searcher for Spore that also sets a field spell so we can pop it with Fairy Dragon. And that's it for that whole package. Then we're on to the actual Centurion stuff. So we play 3 Trudea. This is also a starter, so we play it at 3. And when Trudea is in the monster zone, you can put her in the back row as a trap and put any Centurion monster from deck in the back row with her. So you normal summon her, you put her in the back row, and then you can also special summon her from the back row once per turn to the front row and modulate her to 8 if you would like. So what you're putting in the back off of her is going to be Primera, which is another 1-card starter, so we play her at 3. This one can't put itself in the back row, but if it gets put back there by, say, Trudea or any other effect in our deck, you can special summon her to the front row. And when she is normal or special summon, you can add any Centurion card from deck to hand. Pretty dope. She also has a minor effect to protect your high-level Centurion monsters. Not super relevant because we're using her as synchro material and we don't just tend to keep her on the end board forever. So we also then play a couple of one-ofs. So we play one of Autry because this can be used as either a tuner or a non-tuner, which is pretty cool. And then if you have gone through a Centurion and an Emblem card and have both of those in the grave, when you summon her, you can draw a free card. So this is just a card you can grab if you have everything else already. to just get card generation, which is pretty cool. Then we play one of Gargoyle. This is part of our mainline combo because it's our level 8, and if you special summon it, you can modulate it down to 4. Most of the time we want to leave it at 8 so that we can use it with Primera to make level 12s. That's what this deck is really good at. But also, if this card is used as synchro material, you can add it back to your hand, and then you can send a Centurion card you control to grave to special summon this from hand. So if you have extra material lying around that you don't really need, you can use that to get Gargoyle out as extra material. It's kind of weird. Most of the time, it comes back to hand so that you can discard it later. You don't use that special summon super often, but just be aware that you can. Then we play 3 of Emblem Oath, which is another starter. This allows you to, as a quick play spell, place a Centurion monster in your back row from your deck. So that is combo on its own, but it does lock you into only summoning Centurions while that card is on your field. So we tend to actually use the other effect more often, which lets you instead set a Centurion spell or trap from deck. That has no restriction. So the first effect to send a monster is more relevant on the opponent's turn, while setting a spell trap is better on your turn, because you can just set Stand Up Centurion. This is our field spell and what the entire deck, not even just the Centurion archetype, but the entire deck is built around. So Stand Up Centurion is a field spell that protects itself while you have a Centurion monster card from being destroyed, which is very good because it is important to keep this card around. And then once per turn, if this card was activated this turn, so you can't use it every turn unfortunately, that would be very strong, you can send one card from hand to grave to place a Centurion monster from deck in your back row, so that gets you started just as any of the other cards that do that do. And then, if a monster is special summoned while this is on the field, you can immediately conduct a synchro summon. So the idea is that you go through your full combo, you end with a couple things in the back row, and because they're traps, they can activate their effects on the opponent's turn, summon themselves, the stand-up sees that to synchro summon on the opponent's turn immediately. So that's just like an extra free summon on the opponent's turn into something big and scary. And this is, again, searchable off the World of Spirits package because you go through Fairy Dragon, which pops World of Spirits, which searches the stand-up. That's the conceit behind this deck. The last Centurion card we're playing is Centurion True Awakening, which is a counter trap that is an Omni-Negate. It is very searchable, but you have to send a monster in your spell trap zone to the grave to use it. So the Centurion package itself doesn't always play this card, despite how powerful it is, because the amount of materials you get in Centurion is pretty exacting. You get exactly enough to make a big Centurion on your turn, then make a big Centurion on the opponent's turn. This deck, we can more routinely have extra materials lying around that we don't need for synchro summons to send with True Awakening, so I play one in this. Then for a little bit of generic synchro support, we're playing Revolution Synchron. Almost useless in Centurion itself, but very useful with the Regulus stuff. And then because we're playing things that we can make with that package, it does become more useful for the deck as a whole. I think it's a really good extender, so we're playing 3. Because this card allows you, if you're summoning a level 7 or level 8 Synchro Dragon, you can use this from hand. That's very, very powerful, because that means that you can normal summon Regulus, get Ash Blossomed, and then still go into Fairy Dragon with Revolution from hand. And then when it's in the grave, as long as you have a level 7 or higher Synchro monster, which is our entire extra deck, you can mill yourself for 1, summon it as a level 1 to use as another tuner. So just a very strong extender in Synchro decks that care about level 7 and 8. So then we're playing 3 Ascator Dawnwalkers and 1 Fire Ant Ascator. Fire Ant, you can ignore the text, just know it is a level 3 tuner that you can summon off Ascator. This is actually a 1-card starter for the deck, because if Ascator is in hand, you can discard a card, special summon it as a level 5 non-tuner, and then special summon the Fire Ant from your deck or hand. So that lets you immediately go into an 8. Centurion has a level 8 synchro that can get you started. So it's just here as 3 more copies of starters, more extension for the deck, helps you build a better end board. Pretty cool. It's just the most expensive starter because you have to discard an additional card, but I still think it's worth having. Then we play one Terraforming because that can get you either the stand-up Centurion, the World of Spirits, or our one of Chicken Game. Chicken Game is here because it doesn't really count as a brick, because even if you just draw it, you activate it, you pay 1,000 life, you draw a card. It has refunded itself at the cost of very, very little resources. The reason that it's here is because if you open, say, Regulus and stand-up, you can still do the Regulus combo, but you don't need to grab another stand-up as your field spell. You can then grab Chicken Game instead as a free card draw, instead of just having the extra stand-up sitting in your hand doing nothing. So that's why it's here, and it has no opportunity cost, so it's fine. Then, in addition to our 19 one-card starters, we are playing 19 non-engine. So, not a whole lot to say here. I play a variety of one-ofs because that lets us use Crossout Designator, sure. That's a benefit. Even more importantly, in my opinion, is we draw a good 3 cards, maybe even 4 sometimes, over the course of doing a combo. So we want to be drawing a variety of hand traps to add as extra disruptions on the opponent's turn. So by having just like all of these one-ofs, we are more likely to have, say, an Ash Blossom, a Droll, and a Ghost Ogre in hand at the end of our combo, which is pretty sick. The only other important thing about our non-engine is the fact that we're playing 2 Bestials. So Magnemite can search Autry, which is kind of funny, but not super relevant. The important thing is that they are level 6 darks that we can use to go into Chaos Angel. That makes them a mainstay of Centurion. We can make a Chaos Angel a lot easier in this deck than Centurion does normally, but even then they're just additional bodies. Say we have Spore at the end of our combo and we still have like a Bestial Magnemite on the field, we can summon back Spore, modulate to whatever level we need for the Bestial Magnemite to become material, and then we can use it as extra synchro. So they're disruptions that give us synchro material that can sometimes make us a light dark Chaos Angel, so they're pretty important to the deck. So then we're on to the extra deck. So Ancient Fairy Dragon is another crux of this deck. So it is a level 7 synchro that once per turn allows you to pop all field spells and go add another field spell from deck to hand, gain 1,000 life. So the Regulus combo puts World of Spirits, we pop World of Spirits, we grab Stand Up. Stand Up is a 1-card starter for Centurion. Its other ability is that once per turn you can special summon a level 4 or lower from your hand, but you don't get to use your battle phase that turn. Doesn't really matter if we're going first and comboing. So the Centurion stuff can sometimes, depending on what your starter is, need its normal summon, but Regulus also needs a normal summon. So as part of the Regulus combo, we use that extra special summon to put Trudea on the field because it doesn't have a way to special summon itself out. So the fact that it has 2 very, very good effects make this work as a combo piece. We also play a couple of other toolboxy level 7s, so we play Black Rose Dragon, which when synchro summoned destroys all cards on the field. That includes itself. So the idea is that going second, you can normal summon any level 4, and then with Revolution Synchron in hand, go into Black Rose, and that immediately demands an answer. That demands a negate more than anything, because even if they destroy this, even if they banish it after hitting the field, that trigger is still in the chain, and they will still lose their entire board. So it is an ultimatum for the opponent: negate this or lose your board, going second, and we can pop it out very quickly as a jump scare. Then we play F.A. Dawn Dragster. This is our last 7, and I don't use it terribly often, but it is a 7 we can go into that is a spell trap negate. It also does piercing damage, so you can say if the opponent is trying to like crooked cook lock you, you can kill them with F.A. Dawn Dragster, which is kind of funny. Mostly it's just a spell trap negate you can make if you don't need to make any other level 7s. Then we play one Centurion Primera Primus. So this is a starter for Centurion. This is why the Ascator works as a starter, because it gets you into an 8, and that is going to be Primera Primus. And Primus, when summoned, adds an Emblema card from deck to hand. That's going to be Emblema Oath, which then gets you off to the races. It also has a couple of other little weird niche effects. So if this card's in your grave, and one of your Centurion cards is sent to the grave as well, you can special summon it back. That's pretty cool in and of itself. It doesn't trigger the search again, because that requires synchro summoning, but what it does do is it activates that first line of text, where this card cannot be destroyed by battle unless it was special summoned from the extra deck. So it kind of acts as a circuit breaker, where it summons itself back from grave, and then holds the line so the opponent can't just kill you, so it goes back to your turn, hopefully, so that you can rebuild. That's kind of the point of those two pieces of text. Sometimes they can just destroy it after it comes back anyways, but the hope is that it's one more obstacle in the way of killing you. Then we play one Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, because you can make this off of a level 1 tuner and Ancient Fairy Dragon, and this is a monster negate and destroy, and if you destroy a monster, it gains attack equal to whatever it destroyed until end of turn. So it's a big beater, monster negate, cool. It's just a good card, generally. Then we play one of Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon. We're not actually doing the Stardust Tribute weird thing that it can do, but if you synchro summon this card, you can special summon a level 2 or lower tuner from the grave. So you can special summon back your Spore, and then modulate Spore to whatever level, go with the Synchro Dragon, and go into whatever else. It's just, if you don't need to go into Primera Primus, Ascator can go into the Synchro Dragon and get you to whatever level of Synchro you want, which is pretty dope. Then we're playing one of Shenshin. This is our only 9 in the deck, but it's still pretty simple to make. It's Macrocosmos almost on a body. Any card sent from the field to the graveyard is banished instead. That doesn't affect us too terribly much because we're making it at the end of our combo, and also it affects us less than the opponent, because once per turn when your monster declares an attack, you can return a banished monster to the graveyard. So you can recycle the resources it's banishing, your opponent cannot. It's pretty dope. It also just completely wins versus certain decks, and against us, while we do touch the graveyard, we don't mind on turns 3 and beyond our stuff going to banishment as much as a lot of decks would. Then we have our Chaos Angel. So Chaos Angel is a level 10 synchro that when summoned allows you to banish one card on the field, targeting. Not super relevant. You can do that on the opponent's turn and get the banish, which is pretty cool. We're mostly using it for the other effects. So if you summon it with a light monster, all of your synchros become immune, including itself, to the opponent's monster effects. That's really, really strong in this deck. If you summon it with a dark, all of your synchros cannot be destroyed in battle. That is much less important, so it's very nice that the light is the one that we're getting if we're only getting one. You can sometimes make a light dark. We're mostly just making the light Chaos Angel so that all of our huge bodies that we're already putting out and already have protection just have more protection. Then we play one level 11 in Psychic and Punisher. Punisher is unaffected if your life is less than your opponent's life. So we don't pay a whole ton in this deck. We've got a little bit with Chicken Game, but if you are in a bad position, you make it's a giant tower. It can also pay 1,000, banish one monster you control and any one card your opponent controls, so that is another way to reduce your life total. And then at the start of each battle phase, it gains attack permanently equal to the difference between your and your opponent's life total. So it gets very, very big, very, very fast, and it stays there forever. Then we've got our 12s, which make up the bulk of our extra deck. The first one is going to be Centurion Legatia. So this card, when special summoned, allows you to draw a card and then destroy your opponent's monster with the highest attack total, which is pretty sick. Sometimes we're using it on our turn just to draw a card, but if you can summon it on the opponent's turn with our Centurion field spell, then you get a destruction too, which is cool. It also has a minor effect to protect your small monsters from being destroyed by battle. We don't really care about that much. We don't tend to leave small bodies on the field. And then on end phase, it puts a Centurion monster from grave in your back row. That's super good because it enables you to do the synchro summons on your opponent's turn. So very good, very useful, very important card in the deck. Next up is Auxilo, which reads similar, but its protection effect is more important because it protects face-up cards in your spell and trap zone from being destroyed by card effects. Very, very important for this deck because we have very, very important spell and trap effects. Then, It also, when special summon, instead of just drawing you a card and popping an opponent's card, it adds a Centurion card from deck to hand. So that is any of our starters, or we're normally adding our True Awakening if we're summoning Auxila, and then it has that same effect to end phase, put something in the back row. Very, very good. We're normally summoning one of these two as part of a combo. It depends on what your hand and board look like, which one you're going to grab, but you're getting one of these every time. Then we play a Crimson Dragon, because Crimson Dragon can be made as any other 12 with one tuner and one non-tuner, but then Quick Effect allows you to target any synchro you have. So, for example, you can target your Auxila, return the Crimson to your extra deck, and summon another synchro with the same level. It counts as synchro summoning, but it doesn't require weird specific materials. So by targeting Auxila, you can summon Red Supernova Dragon. Red Supernova Dragon wants to take 3 tuners and 1 non-tuner synchro, which is a crazy line of text. We don't care because we're just summoning it off Crimson Dragon, which is great because this card can't be destroyed by card effects and gains 500 attack for every tuner in the graveyard. So it's routinely between 5 and 6,000 attack and can't be destroyed by card effects. And then once per turn, if your opponent activates any card effect, you can banish this card until your next end phase and banish the opponent's entire board forever. So it is a board wipe on a giant protected body. Very, very powerful card, and it solos some matchups. Our other target for Crimson Dragon is going to be Cosmic Blazar Dragon, which its actual requirements read just as crazy as Supernovas, but again, we can summon it off Crimson. And then once you do so, you can once per turn banish this until the end phase to do one of these effects. You can end the battle phase, you can negate a card or effect, or you can negate and destroy a special summon. So it is a kind of a silver bullet for any one thing you're worried about once per turn, and then it comes back on the end phase so you can do it again your next turn. So this is more frequent disruption than Red Supernova, even if it is not as powerful. Which one you're going to get really depends on what you're playing against. So that is going to be it for the actual deck profile. Let's get into some combos. Alright, so starting off our combos is going to be our Regulus 1.5 card combo. For anything we do with Centurion, we will need one card in hand to discard, but the actual AFD stuff goes through without worrying about that. So starting off, we're going to normal summon the Regulus, which is going to find World of Spirits so we can activate it and search Spore. We can then special summon Spore using Regulus and modulate its level up to 3 so we can go into Ancient Fairy Dragon and pop the World of Spirits to go get Stand Up Centurion, which allows us to go into full Centurion combo, and we have Spore in the graveyard to still come back and go into the Chaos Angel later. So we grab Primera, Primera grabs Trudea, Trudea sets Gargoyle. This is where I go into Chaos Angel because we do want to keep Fairy Dragon long enough to special summon the Trudea. So we go into Chaos Angel now, we go into our, either of the Centurions, but Auxila is what I go into here, which lets us search up True Awakening. We set 2, and we'll pass. So this is what it ended up being. We did get a refund because we drew one card off of Regulus, shuffling back World of Spirits, so we end up drawing back the one card we discard, and we end with the same number of cards in hand. So it's not technically like you're losing value, you're renting the value away to your graveyard, and you'll get it back later. So pretty strong end board off of one card. Cool. Next up is our 1.5 card Trudea Combo. So most of the Centurion lines end up looking pretty similar. You're just trying to get the same 4 cards into rotation. So I've just chosen Trudea as our normal summon for this combo. So we're going to normal summon the Trudea. Trudea bounces back to the back rooms and puts Primera there, which can pop back out to the main monster zone and grab us Stand Up. Activate Stand Up to set Gargoyle, and now we have all 4 cards in rotation. Gargoyle hops out, and we can do our first Synchro Summon into Auxila. We get Gargoyle back, we add True Awakening, and then on end phase we're going to be able to set Primera, so that on the opponent's turn we can bounce these 2 out, Synchro Summon using our field spell into the Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon targets Auxila, swaps out into either Cosmic Blazar or Red Supernova. I like Red Supernova. Cosmic Blazar is probably more generally useful, but sometimes an opponent just cannot beat Red Supernova. But, you know, we get either of those off of the Centurion stuff. And lastly, for our one-card combo, we're going to do the Ascator package. So we actually need 2 discards for this one instead of just 1, which makes it a little bit worse than most of our starters, but it acts as just a really solid extender that can be a one-card starter if you need it. So we're going to activate the Ascator, discarding a card to summon itself, and then we can summon Fire Ant from deck and go into Primera Primus. So Primus gets us the Emblem of Oath, and we can use that to set Stand Up, activate Stand Up to set our Primera by discarding another card. Primera summons herself, grabs Trudea. Hey look, we haven't normal summoned yet, so we normal summon the Trudea and bounce her back to put Gargoyle. Summon Gargoyle, go into, this time I go into Legatia, you could still do the other one if you wanted to. We get back Gargoyle, we draw a card, end phase we set the Primera. So this is pretty similar to the Trudea line or any of the other Centurion lines, except we end with Primera Primus on board. There's stuff we can do with that. Technically, we could send her off of Gargoyle, and then if something else leaves the field, she comes back and can't be destroyed by battle. That's something you could choose to do. If you have extra extension, you can use her along with, like, a Summon Trudea if you can have Gargoyle on field already. So there's things you can do with the body, but she is not, like, necessarily a disruption, so this is not necessarily much of a better combo than just normal summoning Trudea. Just know that it is a combo that works just fine. Cool? Cool. And we're back with closing thoughts on our Centurion Fairy Dragon deck. So as far as pros go, our end board is much stronger than a basic Centurion end board. So Centurion is known as this deck that puts like one big body on the field and then one huge disruption on the field. One disruption, regardless of how big, often is not enough to do it nowadays. It was good enough 2-3 years ago, but the deck's kind of fallen behind a little bit in terms of power. So by boosting that end board up, we give it back some of that power that is necessary to compete in the modern era. The other pros are that we get an extra 7 starters in this deck, which is pretty sick because Centurion only has 12 one-card starters on its own and no real way to do a 2-card start, so it was a little bit bricky previously. I guess you could run the terraforming, that makes it 13. But 19 is a more comfortable number in my opinion. 12 is not nothing, that's like the bare minimum I consider good enough for a modern deck to compete, but 19 is a lot more comfortable. As far as cons, we do play extra bricks. Centurion has a few in its own engine, but it's really pretty succinct. You've got Atri you don't love to see, Gargoyle you don't love to see, and True Awakening you don't love to see. None of those are like a hard Garnet or anything, and that's the only 3 things you don't want in your opening hand, really, in a pure Centurion build. We play, in addition to those 3, Spore is a brick. Sometimes we can discard it and use it, but most of the time we just don't like seeing it. World of Spirits is a brick. We can search Regulus, but there's nothing else for Regulus to search after using World of Spirits, so at that point the combo's already gone. It could, in theory, grab a Spore and then discard the Spore, and then we can do some weird things with that, but it's very situational. The Fire Ant Ascator is another brick in this deck, so we've got twice as many bricks as a normal Centurion deck, at the cost of having an additional 7 starters. So you can consider that a con. I think it nets about neutral for the deck, if I'm being completely honest. The other con, in my opinion, is the fact that we have so many normal summon starters. We've got 3 Regulus, 3 Trudea, 3 Primera. While yes, Ancient Fairy Dragon can special summon something from hand to use as extension, if we can't get to the Fairy Dragon in the first place, then our number of extenders to keep going after, say, we normal summon Regulus and it gets ashed, we can't use the Trudea and the Primera to keep going. We could use an Emblem of Oath, we could use a stand-up, things like that. But it is important to know that we will sometimes just, our two starters are Trudea and Regulus, and that doesn't matter. It does not matter to us at which point one of those is a brick. So that is my take on the deck. I don't know. I haven't played enough Centurion in my life to say if this is better or worse than a traditional one. I think it's probably better if you're playing just this package. Maybe you want to go down the Revolutions because they're a little bit more situational, but they have come up and they have been important to me with the Regulus package before. Maybe you don't want to play the Fire Ant stuff, which is understandable because it adds a brick and it is the highest cost starter in the deck, but at that point you're like a little bit brickier, so it somewhere in the middle might be the best version of Centurion right now. This might not be it, but I also don't think pure Centurion is it anymore. But anyways, that is going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.